Until now, we've used an array adapter to display data. Array adapter works as follows. Below it has a collection, in this case an array list, which stores the set of data to be displayed. However, it's not always the best solution. Sometimes, for instance, in case of extremely large data collections, we want to extract only the part which is currently needed. As we already have the database, in this case we can use a simple cursor adapter. It's a special variant which uses the cursor directly in order to obtain only the lines which are currently needed, so the list displays only as much data as it needs and doesn't have to obtain the dataset right away. In this module, we'll discuss how to use the cursor adapter, how to get the cursor by executing the relevant query, as well as learn how to modify the simple cursor adapter so that it displays the data in a given manner. We'll start by getting the cursor. To do so, we return to our to-do DAO and create a query. This is a method which takes certain data and, based on it, returns the relevant cursor including the data. We'll use the existing implementation. After pasting the query method, we have to correct the missing imports. The goal of our method will be to call the select from to-dos query, where the user ID is already specified and the sorting order depends on the ASC parameter. In this case, it's the ascending or decreasing value of the updated at column. Depending on when the given element was last modified, it will be placed higher or lower on our list. As we'll execute the select query, we need a database to be read. That's why in our DB helper, we call the getReadableDatabase method. The database obtained this way is remembered, and we call the query method on it. This method takes a relatively large number of parameters. The first one is the name of the table from which we'll choose the data. The second parameter is the table which includes the columns we want to have in our query. As we execute the select query, we pass a null here, which will return all the columns included in the given table. The third argument is a selection. It's the part of the query present directly after where. In our case, it's user_ID equals question mark. The question mark denotes the place where we'll insert the parameter. The parameters are stored in the next argument, that is, selection args. In this case, we store the user ID value, which we've added to our method. The other two fields are group by and having. In our case, we'll execute neither grouping nor having. The last parameter we use is order by. It's a string which appears in the query directly after order by. In our case, we'll perform sorting by the contents of the updated at column. We also specify the sorting direction, that is, ASC or DESC, depending on the flag value. The entire method returns the cursor. This is an object which makes it possible to iterate over the data returned from the table. As a default, the cursor is set before the first result element. checking whether subsequent elements exist, we can move and get subsequent data lines. In our case, we won't iterate over data manually. We'll use the simple cursor adapter, which will recognize whether there is any data and display it. That's why we'll use the query method inside the to-do list activity in order to get a cursor for filling with data. Now let's go to the to-do list activity. Given that we'll need the to-do deo again, a better approach is to move it to the onCreate method and store it as a field. Instead of using an array adapter, we'll use a simple cursor adapter. Its construction takes 5 parameters. The first one, obviously, is the context. The next one is the layout. We can use a default or custom layout. The third parameter is the cursor. Temporarily, we'll pass a null there. We then pass 2 arrays, the string from array and the int2 array. The final parameter are the additional flags which we can pass. In our case, we pass 0 here. It's important to discuss what exactly the from and to arrays deal with. These arrays are responsible for the column view mapping inside our layout. We can say that we want our content, that is, the column described as to-do deo c content, to be mapped to our ID item CB. Once again, we're dealing here with a situation similar to the one in the default implementation of the array adapter. The data from the column will be transformed to a string for us, and then it will be passed to the setText method inside the text view. In the default implementation, we assume that if we pass a control, it's a text view control. In our case, it's a checkbox, but as I've mentioned, it inherits from text view. We already have the default implementation. We have a simple cursor adapter, which we'll try to set later, so it's best to transform it into a field right away. We just have to set it as the main adapter for our list view. We also need to provide the cursor for the adapter. For this purpose, right after having finished adding the elements in our onPostExecute, we can extract the cursor using the query and set it on the adapter. Taking advantage that we already have a to-do Deo, we can call a query on it. Here, we pass the user ID available in the Login Manager. We don't have a method which allows extracting it, but we can quickly solve this. We go to the to-do application class, and once again, we generate a getter in the Login Manager method. Thanks to this, we'll use the getUserID. As the second parameter, we define the sorting direction. With the cursor, we can set it on our adapter. We have two methods to choose from: swap cursor, which returns the previously set cursor and sets a new cursor, as well as change cursor, which sets the new cursor and closes the old one. We'll use the change cursor method and pass the cursor. Now the table is refreshed.